I met my husband in San Diego. I had moved there for work, and we had a mutual friend. He had just gotten back from a deployment, so he was just home, doing what they do when they're done with a deployment. And my friend had invited him to come to the beach with her and a couple girlfriends, and of course, he said yes. I definitely want to go to the beach with you and your girls, right? And so he met us down there. He had just gotten his tattoo freshened up, so he was just showing off. And I remember thinking, like, wow, that guy's really hot, but he's in the military, and I want nothing to do with him. Nothing. I was determined that that was going to be my home. I was going to stay in San Diego. I was going to stay there forever. And I knew that getting involved with him meant none of that. I told him I wanted nothing to do with him because of his career, because I grew up as a military brat, and I 100% wanted to make roots, and I wanted to stay where I was living, and I wanted to feel what it was like to have a home. But he was persistent and cute, and it worked, and 6 months later we got married. Love when you give up a beachfront condo in San Diego to move to Fort Riley, Kansas. People always ask me, where are you from? And I have no answer. I have a short answer. When I don't want to explain my life, I tell them that I'm from Arizona. When I am with my husband and I don't want to explain my life, I say we're from San Diego because that's where he's from. And then if I feel like I have time, or I want to get to know you, or I want someone or them to get to know me, I'll tell them I'm a military brat. And my move here to Louisiana was my 17th move. I feel like military life is somewhat old-fashioned and yet at the same time very progressive. We are kind of thrown into situations where we have to make friends with anybody and everybody, and those friendships are very deep. They're more than just friendships. They're family. That's your family. And so you're not, those prejudices, you have to leave them if you have them, because you're not going to be successful and you're not going to have a happy life with those. Growing up in the military, I had to learn about racism in a different way. I feel like being multicultural, I didn't see it as a bad thing or a weird thing or even something that was rare. I didn't realize that I was a rare thing at all. I just, thought I'm me. And my dad always told me that I was American. And growing up, I thought, yeah, I'm American. And nobody ever asked me, what are you or anything like that in a negative way. But I remember when my dad got out of the military and we moved to a community that did not have a lot of military people. So they weren't used to that. And I was taking a standardized test, and you had to pick what you were, what race you were, right? Or your ethnicity, what ethnicity you were. And you could only pick one. And they, it was black, white, Asian. I'm half Japanese, half Italian. My dad's 100% Italian, my mom is 100% Japanese. And I remember my teacher telling me to pick the one that fit me best. And so I picked that I chose Native American because I didn't know what that meant. I was American. And I was a kid, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I remember my teacher telling me, "You're not Native American." And I said, "Well, I'm from America." Because I just didn't know. I didn't get it. And it was something that I had to learn. I think that's another common misconception, is that women spouses, female spouses, marry our male soldiers, and we are this cookie cutter wife. We bake with our heels and aprons on, and we have 2.5 kids, and we have a dog, and our lawns are nicely mowed, and our houses are super clean, and we do laundry all in one day. And that doesn't happen, and I don't know no family I've ever met is like that at all. Whenever I tell people I'm a military brat, they think, oh, you were made for this life. And I think, no, I don't think anyone was made for this life. This life is still something you very much have to adjust to, and is an ongoing adjustment, whether you've been a wife for 2 years or you've been a wife for 20 years. It is an ever-changing life that you only have a little bit of control over. As a kid, it's easier, in fact, because you don't make any of the choices at all, and you don't realize, or at least I didn't realize that people didn't move. I thought every single person moved because everyone I knew moved every 2 to 3 years. That was our thing. And so I didn't realize that I was this weirdo that moved constantly until I got older. And I started to go to schools with kids that weren't moving all the time. And they would say that they had lived in the same house their whole life. And I thought, well, that's strange. Really? Right. And I thought to myself, well, how do you get rid of your stuff? And, we don't spring clean, we PCS, and what do you mean your vacations don't mean you just end up in a different home, in a different state? That's what a vacation is. I don't think that being a military brat necessarily helped me in any way, except for the fact that I am really good at having a positive outlook on moving. And I think I 100% credit my parents for that, because my parents are the type of people that they knew that we were only going to be somewhere for 2 to 3 years. They were going to take full advantage of wherever we lived, whether they loved it or not. When we moved to Virginia, and my mom cried while we drove to our house. She did not like it there at all. But I remember going to museums in DC. I remember going to George Washington's house. I remember going to Jamestown and visiting our family in New Jersey. And I remember constantly taking advantage of where we lived, because my parents knew we were only going to be there for 3 years. And so even though my mom hated it there, as a kid I would have never been able to tell, because she treated it like she loved it. And so now whenever I move, that's how I go about things. I move and I think, okay, I can either hate being here for 3 years and be miserable and waste 3 years of my life, or I can take advantage of an opportunity that very few Americans get. Most Americans do stay in their hometown. Right. They make a few moves and they're there. And so I can either, like I said, be miserable for 3 years, or I can take full advantage of having this amazing experience and seeing the different cultures that America has, and sometimes in the world has. It's funny, actually. So we kind of mirrored what my parents did in a weird way. My parents had met, and 6 months later they got married. And their first big move and everything was to England. And so that's kind of what we did. Our first big move together was to Germany. And it was great because we had to make friends together. And we started new together. And so in Kansas, it was his friends that I was meeting and everything. Right. Yeah. But in Germany, no one knew me as my maiden name. No one knew him as Single Adam or anything like that. We were just a married couple. Yeah. And it was really great. I loved Germany. It was quite an adjustment being so far from home. And we were very lucky. We were in a very large military community where they had all branches of the military there. And my husband was working at the hospital there, which is a different type of assignment for him. And so his schedule was different. And I remember he would come home for dinner most nights. And I was like, oh, you're here again. Okay. I guess I'll cook regularly now. I am very career driven. Moving to Germany, for the first probably 3 months, I was devastated. And not because I was necessarily away from my family or anything, but because I lost who I was. I lost my career. And that's how I had to find myself. I don't have children, and so I'm not able to kind of say that, well, I'm a mom and, you know, and build myself up that way or anything like that. My career was me. And so moving to Germany, you know, you don't have a choice where you move. And so, I was excited for like the traveling opportunities and things like that. But the real life of it was very difficult and very lonely. And as an adult, it's hard to make friends also. The two main places you meet friends are through things with your kids or work.
That's absolutely
right.
true.
And I didn't have either one. And so it was really difficult. And I found that I started to become very introverted, which is not like me at all. I am very much an extrovert. I am very okay with going to the movies by myself and going to a restaurant by myself and things like that. But I found that I kind of went down into this spiral. And then finally I made a friend. And it was like this connection that I needed. And we didn't, I wouldn't say we had a ton in common, except for the fact that we were both displaced in this country, that we didn't speak their language, and we both had husbands that were working and we were not. And that was really about it. She was a little older than me. She had children. She was super put together, this amazing wife. And I sometimes got dinner on the table. Right. And, but it worked. And she was kind of the first person that I realized, you know what? There are so many amazing women here. And they're probably all feeling the same way as me. And it took me meeting someone who was totally different than me, but still having that connection to make me realize that I was excluding myself from the potential of making so many friends. Because I had put myself in this box like, oh, I don't have kids, so I can't be friends with these people that have kids. And, oh, I got married when I was a little older, so I can't be friends with these people who have been married for a long time. Or, oh, I can't be friends with these young wives because I'm so much older and I have a career. And, all of these different boxes I had put myself and everyone else in.
In the deployments you've walked through, what have been some of those challenges, or what has your experience been like with that?
I think with any time that a spouse is away, you establish routines. Your kids establish routines, you establish routines. It's the same as if you don't have kids. You establish these routines. And I think it's easier because it's just you. It is very lonely when it's just you. The worst is when they leave right when you move, and we live off post also. And so living off post, not in the middle of the military community, you don't necessarily have your neighbor that's able to come over and just spend a few hours with you and then realize, oh shoot, it's 11, I should go home. Because I live, fairly far from here. I don't have that. And so I think it's more lonely, but at the same time, you throw yourself more into work, and you kind of have the opportunity to work on yourself more. I read a lot more when my husband's gone. Yeah. I'm able to work on myself. So I don't think it's necessarily as stressful because I'm not picking up the slack that is there. And I don't have that I don't have someone else that's emotionally missing my husband. It's me. It's just me. And so since it's just me and it's just my feelings, I'm not taking on anyone else's feelings. And so I definitely always feel for mothers whose husbands are away, because they're sad, and then they're taking on their children's feelings as well, and they're trying to be strong for their kids and everything. Whereas myself, I don't have to act any certain way. I can go home and I can cry. I can go home and binge watch whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. Here at Fort Polk, I started a Facebook group for spouses without kids, and we have over 200 people in the group. Awesome. And I don't think anyone realized that there were so many people that didn't have children. And it's not just the young spouses, the 18-year-old spouses. There are people who are in their 30s, like myself, who also don't have kids, for whatever reason it may be. And the thing is, it's nobody's business but your own, and we understand that. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, sometimes we're in situations where we say, oh, we don't have kids, and people will go, oh, why not? Or they'll go, oh, don't worry, it will happen eventually. Or they'll, they say things that they don't necessarily mean to be mean, but it is very judgmental. And personally, as a career woman, I never experienced that because I was always around other very career-driven women who had also put their career first, and then were getting married later on in life. And so I had never experienced that until till marrying into the military. And it was rough at first finding where I fit in that, how to respond to things. I've come across a lot of, or I wouldn't say a lot, but enough women who have definitely thought, I don't deserve a specific house because I don't have children, and I understand space-wise, people with children need more space. I get that, but that doesn't mean that because my husband and I don't have kids, we should belong in the apartments with the 18-year-olds who also don't have kids. Right. Because then I'm not going to make any friends because they don't want to be married, or they don't want to live next to the old lady who's right. complaining that they're right. up and loud and doesn't want to go out with them because I'm an You're right, yeah. So, I've definitely experienced that. And that's why I started the group. The military, I feel like you can get lost as a spouse. And I wanted a space for women who still felt lost because they didn't have that connection, that child connection, where they could join MOPS, or they could join, or meet moms at soccer practice or anything like that. I wanted a space where they could feel welcome, where they weren't pressured to have kids just to fit in, because that's not a reason to have children.
Terrible reason to have
But
children.
I feel like some people do have children because they feel like that's the only way they can fit in, or that's going to fill that lonely hole that they have, and that's not true at all. I love children, but for some people that's not in the cards. And I think that you need to have a space where that's okay. One thing I try to do and really focus on when I'm with, especially my military friends, when I'm introducing another friend to another friend, I say nothing about their spouse and I say nothing about their children. And I say things like, this is my friend Brittany. We are on the spouses board together. She is hilarious. You'll love her. Or this is my friend Jackie. She is super outdoorsy. We love to go on, wild adventures together and things like that. And I like to describe them and introduce them about like who they are, not who they're married to, not how many children they have or anything like that. I feel like those are little details that don't actually affect our relationship whatsoever, because I'm not going to be your friend because you have 5 kids and I have 5 kids.
Right, you do or don't.
Right. That doesn't matter. And I'm not going to be your friend because your husband and my husband happen to work together or anything like that. Right. That is an irrelevant thing. And so I think it's important to, focus on stuff like that, on remembering who you are, because when you're a spouse, sometimes you do get lost in that mix.